Edgar Cayce, we have the entity in those relations with the universe and universal forces, as are latent and exhibited in the present entity. 240. Well named. Gladys Davies note, his middle name is Warren. See paragraph 13 below. In entering, we find, astrologically, these influences have to do with this entity: Jupiter, Mercury, Mars, Venus and Neptune. In the order named do they influence the entity, yet this influence is often applicable in the manner as was given. Those that have eyes to see, let them see, or those who have ears to hear, let them hear. In the application of these influences, these are altered, changed or modified often by the application of will, which makes of man the difference between man and the rest of creation, as related to the earth or material plane, for in man's manifestation there are seen the elements and the abilities of all creation as manifested in this material plane. In Jupiter is seen the great scope of vision that is often manifested in the mental abilities of the entity. In this relation, also, there is often seen the variation which comes from bigness, and the exercising of influence that has to do with power, or influence of power, as related to those in position, politically, financially, and such. The entity is able to use these, often, where others apparently in a much safer, and often saner position, judged materially, cannot. The entity is able to use such in a way and manner as to make of same, from same, that which answers for that the entity would build toward. In Mercury, this often, in its conjunction with Mars and Jupiter, brings an influence wherein, continually do such questions become to the entity such as must be weighed by the material standard, must be measured by common sense, and not judged by something mysterious or not understood. Things must be made concrete. They must have a material foundation. They must be something that can be used as force when necessary to chastise another. In Venus and in Neptune we find the opposite conditions, and in those same influences, where vision and magnitude of interest are seen or experienced, these, when weighed in the balance of love, sympathy, understanding, endurance, casting out of fear, yet taking by faith, these build, and have builded for the entity, those conditions that have brought the most gratifying, the most used and useful interests in the experience of the entity. Taken, then, astrologically, and study that as has been given, and in those periods when Neptune and Venus have been in their relationships with the Earth, that the activities of the body have added to the world's source of knowledge for the entity, in mental and in material affairs, and when those of Mars were in the same position with Mercury and of Jupiter, those years brought the indecisions, the not wholly content, the not wholly satisfactory surroundings for the entity. Illustration of same in 1898 and 1897, again in the reverse in 1819, and again in 1912 and 13. In the influences builded in the entity, one that finds friendships meaning much to self. One not gifted in the expressions of confidence by word of mouth. Rather by the physical manifestations of confidence does the entity express that felt towards friend or foe. Then, a good friend, and also a good foe, for the entity hard to give up where there has been full faith and confidence placed, unless there appears those activities in the inner self that the entity suddenly turns about as it had been going, and yet is questioning in self why. Often does the entity ask self, why did I do this? Why does that individual act or respond in that manner to those surroundings or those circumstances or conditions? Questioning in those influences that have been so much a portion of the entity's experience through the Earth's plane, and many of these are crystallized in the present experience. For few individuals have gained the association of as many of those that were in contact with the entity's endeavors throughout the various experiences of the Earth. One that makes decisions sometimes slowly, again deciding at once. Most often the entity finds that intuitive influences and seen directions are the most satisfactory, whether in mental influences, material or spiritual, for the guiding of interests. Being so varied, these have builded for the entity that which must be of a decision in a moment, and these have, will be, ever will be the most sacred for the entity. There is builded in same much as is seen in Mars and in Venus, a warring of influences that have to do with the spiritual side of the entity's being shifted or changeable more often in this direction than in the purely material or financial relation, for the entity is governed much by the circumstances in such conditions, often attempting to be all things unto all men, to the entity's own undoing. Better to be sure in the spiritual phase of self's development, and more changeable in that of the mental or material. True, the mind is the builder, but remember, the attributes of the mind are a portion of the soul, as well as a portion of the material or physical mind. One that finds a great interest in the outdoors, yet submerges this often for those surroundings that have more to do with mechanics, and those that are of moving machineries, or of machines. One that, in the influences as seen, will gain most near large expanses of water, and machineries that have to do with the applying of trades across waters will bring greater material gains for the entity, and these that have to do with the carriers and the airways, especially, for we are entering that period where the air consciousness is to become the ruling forces in man's experience. In the appearances, and their influence in the present experience, not that much more may not be given as respecting these influences, but those are given that the entity may know self better experience before this, in that land known as England. The entity then was a guard to the king that came from exile, Charles II, and in the service of that ruler. The entity gained much through that period, being in the confidence and in close personal contact, the things of the inner life being known to the entity. And yet, in this experience, many are the secrets of individuals and groups that are carried by the entity, and it is as mindful of expressing abroad that given in confidence as it would be in destroying its own self. In this association, then, with Charles II, the entity came to power that was not used to the detriment of others, but often in chastising many. In the name whereon, in the experiences in the present there is seen that those conditions as of the economic, the political and the financial interests of that day are of special interest to the entity, and those exploits of individuals that are given special missions by others in power, or to seek out interests for others, whether individual or groups, are of special interest to the entity. In the one before this we find in that land known as the Persian. The entity then was among those that were the keepers of monies for the ruler known as Croesus. Not the head of the exchequer, but rather the confidential secretary of that ruler, falling only in the power through the defeat of that ruler. The entity gained in the latter period, failing in the period when hardships or hard times, or when lean days came upon the entity and those associated with same, holding much malice during that period against those who were the cause of the downfall, and of those who made war against those peoples. In that has experienced in the present, oft has the entity been called into council much as of that period, and especially by that ruler has the entity been sought often for aid in a material, in a social, even in spiritual controversies have there been those conditions that have been much in keeping with that period, yet positions, in a manner, reversed. Croesus his secretary now, to Croesus, UHJLTD period. In the one before this we find in that land known as Egypt. The entity was among those that were subdued when the ruler came in from the north. Among the natives, the entity suffered in the re-establishing of the rule under the young king. The entity was placed back in power, and in the position of the keeper of the outer gates, and of those who brought in and out the fuels, the feed, and the labours of the field. In the experience as a whole, the entity gained, though much bewilderment came to the entity through this period, not knowing to which group to cast the lot. Indecision being the fault, then through this experience, be decisive in every phase. Not foolishly so, but do not try, do not attempt to straddle the fence. Either be for or against, for he that is for me will not be against me. He that is on the Lord's side, who can be against him? In the name Eldon. In the present experience, many of that period will be, have been, contacted by the entity. Do not become undecided in the relationships with any. In the experience the entity saw, heard, knew, understood, much of that as was given in that period, for few were the experiences in the earth's plane that changed the whole of man's ideas as regarding his relationships to the creative forces, as passed during that period, and the entity was a part of same. Be the same in this. In the one before this we find in that land known as Bozida, and in the cities of that land. The entity was among those that were made powerful by the use of, the application of, universal forces in the land, and the entity gained materially through this experience, losing much in the mental and spiritual efficiency of the entity. Yet those relations often bring to the entity many of the conditions that have to do with the changing of the relationships of mechanical appliances. Then, in the field of creative forces, or patented influences, may the entity gain much. Will they be applied for the use of not merely labor-saving, but the abilities to make from man the mental influence as well? Do not make self a part of any that bring curses, rather those that bring blessings to many. In the experience the entity lost and gained, and in the present many of these influences have their influence in the experience of the entity. In the name, ism, in the abilities of the entity in the present, and that to which it may attain and how, as has been seen, the application of will, as toward influences in the life, alters or changes the development of the inner man, the soul. When those are in accord with the divine, or the creative influences, hold to that which is good, cleave to that which is right, irrespective of the thought or the speech of those who would be questioned in same. In the building up, keep thyself aright. Avoid even the appearance of evil. Keep so that committed unto him will be answerable in the acts, material and mental, for thoughts are deeds, and may become crimes or miracles. These are within thine own making. Think right, live right, be right.